Okay, I'd like to thank Mines and Money for providing this opportunity to present a very exciting project in Townsville. Just to put the project in perspective, we have a mining operation in New Caledonia where we're buying ore from two of the major miners in that country, and that the limonite fraction of the laterite is the bit we're after, because we're looking for both nickel and cobalt grades. Generally New Caledonia has quite high grade limonites, and typically they're 2 or 3 times higher grade than what we see in similar resources certainly in Australia. We expect to initially ship about 600,000 tonnes per annum. We have a 15-year supply contract, and 600,000 tonnes will be shipped to Townsville on geared vessels. And the processing plant that we're using is incorporating the D&I process, and it's, I guess we refer to it as clean technology, because it uses recycled nitric acid as the leach reagent, off-the-shelf equipment, and we're able to extract all the metals out of the ore, so that the residue that's left over is basically a silica sand that's filter dried and can be used as an engineered landfill. So the process plant produces a number of byproducts, but the ones I want to talk about today, of course, the mixed hydroxide precipitate, which contains the nickel and cobalt, and the aluminium precipitate, or aluminium hydroxide. The MHP goes into a sulfate refinery that's co-located on the same site as the processing plant, and we produce nickel sulfate hexahydrate and cobalt sulfate heptahydrate, both components of cathode active precursors in electric vehicle batteries. The aluminium hydroxide goes to a co-located HPA refinery, quite a small refinery. We're only producing 4,000 tonnes of HPA, but it is 4 nines purity HPA, and again, destined for the battery sector, for the focusing on the separators, coatings for the polymer separators. It's good to know that early in June, Wood Mackenzie came out with their current forecasts for the next few years, and it's continued positive views about the demand for nickel, and they're projected by 2035 an increase of about 800,000 tonnes per annum. That's a heck of a big number, as you all can imagine. Class 1 nickel, or nickel that can be feedstock that has nickel that can be used in chemical production, is probably only about 40% of the total 2 million tonnes of nickel consumed in the world. So that 800,000 tonnes by 2035 represents nearly 100% increase in that Class 1 nickel for chemical production. It's also good to see they forecast strong premiums out into the future, particularly for those companies producing the high purity sulfates. So the key to it is stay at the high purity end, and the premium should be there for quite a while. In the case of our high purity alumina, we believe we have a very significant advantage in that the aluminium hydroxide, if we look at it as on a alumina equivalent basis and compare it to the other sources of alumina, such as bauxite or kaolin, we have almost double the amount of equivalent alumina, and it's also free because it's a byproduct from the D&I process. So that results in a very low operating cost, and also the the refining stages are, it's a 3-stage precipitation process, so the capital costs are also significantly lower than the alternatives that are out there in the marketplace at present, particularly using kaolin as a feed source. So we're targeting the lithium-ion battery separators because it's happens to be coincident with the other nickel and cobalt that we're producing. So probably we'll be looking for offtake partners that will take those 3 products. Simplifies some of our supply chains and marketing effort. But I should point out that of course the HPA is still finds a market in other areas, in LEDs and Gorilla Glass and things like that. So it's quite a lucrative add-on for our project because of those features I talked about. Back in March this year, we reported the PFS, the combined PFS for the sulfate refinery and the HPA refinery, and if we that 600,000 tonnes of ore produces results in about 26,000 tonnes of nickel sulfate and about 3,000 tonnes per annum of cobalt sulfate, about 4,000 tonnes of HPA. The combined capex for that integrated plant would be in the order of 650 million, with a pretty high contingency at this stage because it's at PFS level. For the financials, we've considered two key metrics: one at a base case number of $7 a pound of nickel, and the other at current spot of $5.70. Both of them produce quite attractive EBITDAs. The base case at $7 is $261 million per annum EBITDA. Spot case is 211. The NPV for the base case is 1.5 million, with a post-tax internal rate of return of about 31%, or about a 3.5-year payback period. If we look at the revenue, total revenue is at that base case is about 440 million, and it's well, it's still dominated by nickel sulfate, but certainly you'll see from that up in the top right-hand corner, that pie chart, that we have the opportunity for a diversification of revenue, and hence reduces some of the risks in the project through changes in commodity prices. The chart down the bottom, this incremental EBITDA is just really reflecting the value add components for each section of the plant. Initially, the processing plant is the major capital, but it has to happen to produce the intermediate products as feedstock for the sulfate refinery and the HPA refinery. But you'll see it has a positive cash flow, an EBITDA effect of 52 million. The sulfate refinery adds another 79 million, and the HPA refinery another 129 million. That adds to the total of 261 million that we showed up in the key metric table on the other side. So quite a strong, robust project, even at spot prices, and the revenue diversification is quite unique in this case, and I guess the value add component that we can, we could possibly do the HPA refinery first and sulfate second, or we can move those things around to suit how the market looks at the time. The plant, processing plant, and the 2 refineries will be built at Townsville in what's called Lansdowne Park. That's located. It's a large industrial complex that's been developed, put in place by the Townsville City Council, and it's about 38 km south of Townsville on the Charters Towers Highway. It's a great spot because it has about gas supply, 35 petajoules per annum, water supply about 80 gigalitres per annum, 275, 66 and 11 kV power, railway line, highway that's capable of handling road trains.